This is it, one wrong move, and it's a $500 million catastrophe. The words cut through the polished glass and marble of the Waitress lounge like lightning striking chrome, echoing across tables of crystal flutes and gleaming silverware. CEO Jason Caldwell's palms were slick with sweat despite the air-conditioned perfection, his tailored navy suit doing nothing to hide the tension in his shoulders as a room full of investors and tech magnates watched his every move. The LED screens behind him flashed graphs in red and green, the numbers dancing on the glossy black surface like a storm he couldn't control. In the corner, Maya Johnson moved quietly, her black uniform simple, her bun tight, her eyes scanning every detail, noting the slight flicker in the projector, the hesitation in the assistant's gaze, the subtle misalignment of data on the dashboard. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The world barely noticed her, as if she were a shadow slipping between the tables, yet her attention was absolute. Jason's voice rose again, laced with frustration and urgency. If we don't fix this now, we're losing the deal, and I don't care who has to do it. The room seemed to shiver at the weight of the stakes, champagne glasses rattling slightly, as if they could feel the tension. Maya's fingers brushed against the edge of the control panel, a microsecond decision, an instinct honed from years of observation and silent problem-solving, and she leaned forward, adjusting a parameter that had been off by a fraction too small for most to notice, but catastrophic in effect. The lights above glinted off her smooth skin, and for a heartbeat, the entire room froze, eyes flicking from her to the screens, trying to process what had just shifted. Jason's brow furrowed, his gaze narrowing as he took in the calm determination of this young waitress who everyone had dismissed, a soft, unassuming figure with an intensity that belied her quiet demeanor. No one moved, no one spoke, yet the air vibrated with disbelief. The hum of the HVAC and the distant chatter seemed to vanish, leaving only the click of the corrected algorithms on the monitor and the subtle but unmistakable easing of tension. Maya straightened, her posture impeccable, her eyes lifting briefly to meet Jason's as if to say, "The problem is fixed. Go ahead and face the consequences of your assumptions." In that moment, the lounge transformed. The sharp angles of the furniture, the glint of the chandeliers, the polished floors, all became a stage for the reversal of expectations. The other servers, the assistants, even the investors, now saw what they had overlooked, the silent competence that could not be quantified but could not be ignored either. Jason exhaled slowly, a mix of relief and shock crossing his features as the numerical chaos on the screens aligned perfectly. The deal that had seemed poised to collapse, now stabilizing under the invisible hand of someone he had underestimated entirely. Maya didn't smile. She didn't boast. She simply resumed her tasks with the same quiet diligence, the sort of precision that made the invisible visible and the impossible suddenly routine. The lounge buzzed again, subtly this time. Attention replaced by awe, whispers spreading about the girl who had fixed a problem that could have cost hundreds of millions. A reminder that brilliance does not always come with a title or a suit, and that sometimes the people you ignore are the very ones rewriting the rules right under your nose. The room remained in suspended silence for a moment, the hum of the air conditioning and the faint clinking of glasses the only sounds filling the space. Investors shifted in their seats, eyes darting between Jason Caldwell and the subtle confidence radiating from Maya Johnson as she moved with quiet precision along the edge of the conference table. Her posture was flawless, shoulders back, chin lifted just slightly, carrying herself as if she belonged not just in the background, but at the center of every critical decision unfolding in the room. Jason ran a hand through his slicked-back hair, his expression a mixture of disbelief and respect, the kind that only comes from witnessing competence that is entirely unexpected. Maya's gaze was calm, measuring, noting each reaction, each micro-expression, aware that her presence alone had shifted the dynamic from chaos to control. The assistant whispered under his breath to another staff member, a barely audible acknowledgement that what had just occurred was extraordinary, a solution executed with the subtlety and elegance that only true understanding could produce. Charts and figures on the monitors now aligned perfectly, the room itself seeming to breathe easier as tension seeped from the corners of the space. Maya continued her tasks methodically, straightening papers, adjusting pens, making sure that the environment mirrored the precision of the work she had just completed. Each small movement was deliberate, a testament to the disciplined mind that had assessed the problem and corrected it before anyone else had fully comprehended the stakes. The investors, some leaning forward, others sitting back with raised eyebrows, exchanged glances that carried the silent language of astonishment and newfound respect. Jason's voice broke the quiet finally, measured and deliberate. "That was impressive," he said, his tone stripped of its usual bravado, replaced with the kind of humility reserved for moments when one realizes that control does not equal infallibility. Maya looked up briefly, her eyes steady, giving only the slightest nod, a signal that her attention remained focused, that the work was not finished until every detail was attended to. The room's lighting cast a soft glow on the polished surfaces, reflections of chandeliers dancing on the glossy floors, each glimmer emphasizing the transformation from tension to a calm that had arrived almost imperceptibly but undeniably. Conversations resumed slowly, the murmurs of appreciation and questions weaving through the room, yet all subtly centered on the presence of the young woman who had solved a problem that could have derailed months of preparation and negotiation. Jason exhaled, the weight of responsibility momentarily lifting from his shoulders, and in that instant, he understood that leadership was not about control alone, but about recognizing talent where it appears, often in places overlooked. Maya moved toward the service area, her steps quiet but assured, carrying with her the invisible authority of someone whose intelligence had just quietly reshaped the course of the evening. The hum of servers moving, glasses being refilled, and the soft murmur of dialogue no longer felt ordinary. It now resonated with the awareness that brilliance had intervened silently yet decisively, reminding everyone present that the most impactful actions are often performed without fanfare. Jason's gaze lingered on her for a moment longer, a subtle acknowledgement passing in the stillness, a recognition of the skill, insight, and calm decisiveness that had just averted a major setback. Outside the windows, the city lights of San Francisco glimmered, indifferent to the drama unfolding within, yet inside, every person now understood the power of observation, preparation, and quiet competence, all embodied in Maya Johnson, whose unseen efforts had turned near disaster into an exhibition of calm brilliance and unspoken command. Maya Johnson paused for a moment near the edge of the lounge, her hands lightly resting on the polished countertop, observing the subtle shifts in energy around her. Jason Caldwell sat back in his chair, eyes narrowing as he considered what had just transpired, a mix of astonishment and reluctant admiration crossing his features. The investors, still murmuring among themselves, leaned closer to one another, exchanging whispered evaluations and glances that all pointed toward the quiet woman who had shifted the tide of the meeting without a single dramatic gesture or exclamation. Maya's mind ran through the sequence of events she had just executed, each decision precise, each correction calculated, and yet delivered with the effortless calm that made it appear almost spontaneous. She adjusted the placement of a pen, straightened a stack of documents, and walked past a row of chairs, her eyes scanning the polished hardwood floor for any misalignment or detail that might have gone unnoticed. Jason cleared his throat and gestured toward her, the subtle motion drawing her gaze as he spoke. "I had not anticipated that level of precision," his voice steady but carrying the weight of sincere acknowledgement. Maya inclined her head slightly, her lips pressed together, giving nothing away, allowing the gravity of her actions to resonate naturally within the room. The hum of conversation slowly returned, softer now, tinged with respect, as people began to recognize the skill and intelligence that had quietly reshaped the environment. Servers moved around her with renewed awareness, adjusting to her presence, and even the assistant paused, noting the ease with which she had identified the issue and corrected it. The city lights from the towering windows reflected off the chrome accents and glass surfaces, casting elongated shadows that danced across the room, giving the space a cinematic quality that made the unfolding interactions feel both intimate and monumental. Maya walked toward a service station, her steps deliberate and fluid, a rhythm that suggested both confidence and control, as if the air itself responded to her awareness. Jason's eyes followed her subtly, his expression softening further, recognizing that leadership was not only about authority, but also about the foresight to value the unseen talents that often remained in the background. The investors adjusted in their seats again, their focus now divided between the recovered stability of the data and the remarkable aptitude of the woman who had restored it. Maya returned to her duties with methodical care, each action purposeful, demonstrating that true capability could manifest without fanfare, commanding attention by competence alone. The lounge now seemed infused with a quiet energy, a recognition of brilliance that demanded acknowledgement, as if the very space had shifted to honor the unspoken command of someone who had proven her worth without raising her voice. Jason exhaled slowly, attention lifted, a subtle smile forming as he reflected on the lesson in humility, insight, and quiet excellence that Maya embodied. The room hummed with renewed purpose, the earlier chaos replaced with a steady, focused atmosphere, the contrast highlighting the transformative impact of observation, patience, and skill. Every detail in the room, from the reflections on the glassware to the precise alignment of notebooks and pens, seemed to underscore the subtle yet powerful influence of her intelligence. Maya's eyes met Jason's briefly, the silent acknowledgement bridging the gap between authority and skill, a recognition that sometimes the most critical contributions are those made without announcement, without expectation, and entirely through the mastery of one's abilities. The investors began to shift back into their discussions, yet their tone carried a new respect, a quiet reverence for the woman who had turned the tide of the meeting with nothing more than her intellect and composure. The soft lighting highlighted the contours of her face as she moved, serene and assured, a reminder that sometimes the most profound influence comes from those who work in the spaces between attention and oversight, whose brilliance is felt before it is spoken, and whose presence quietly redefines the possibilities of everyone who witnesses it. Maya Johnson moved toward the central display screens, her steps quiet but purposeful, the soft click of her shoes on the polished hardwood floor barely audible over the gentle hum of conversation returning to the room. Jason Caldwell watched her with a newfound attentiveness, noticing the subtle precision in her movements, the way she carried herself with a calm authority that contrasted with the previously chaotic energy. The monitors displayed complex analytics, lines and numbers that could overwhelm anyone not fully focused. Yet Maya's eyes traced the patterns with methodical clarity, her mind assessing what adjustments were necessary even before the room had fully realized the shift in control. Investors leaned forward, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and disbelief, noting that the room, once tense and jittery, now held a quiet momentum guided by an unexpected source of competence. Maya adjusted a slider on the main interface, and a small series of alerts disappeared instantly, numbers aligning perfectly across the charts, the subtle transformation invisible to those not paying close attention, yet monumental in its effect. Jason ran a hand over his chin, nodding ever so slightly, his posture relaxing as the weight of the near crisis lifted from his shoulders. The lighting in the room, reflecting off glass and chrome surfaces, caught the gleam in Maya's eyes, highlighting her concentration and the steady control she exerted over the situation without any fanfare. Servers moved efficiently around her, recognizing without words that their colleague had just shifted the room's dynamic, commanding respect through competence alone. Maya paused, taking in the subtle reactions around her, the quick glance from an investor, the slackening posture of an assistant, the barely perceptible shift in Jason's gaze from astonishment to cautious respect. The city skyline outside the expansive windows shimmered against the night, indifferent to the quiet triumph unfolding within, yet providing a cinematic backdrop that seemed to echo the drama and skill playing out inside the lounge. Papers were straightened, pens realigned, a water glass repositioned with deliberate care, each minor action reinforcing the message that attention to detail and mastery of skill could influence events far beyond what anyone initially perceived. Jason leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on the table, observing Maya's methodical work with an intensity that blended admiration and humility, realizing that leadership was not only about decisiveness, but also about recognizing and valuing insight wherever it might appear. Maya's focus never wavered, She continued to verify each adjustment, her hands moving smoothly, eyes scanning the displays, aware that her actions had not only stabilized a critical situation, but also reshaped the perception of her role in the room. Conversations resumed around her, quieter now, underscored with a sense of acknowledgement for the quiet competence that had just recalibrated the entire environment. Jason exhaled slowly, the tight lines around his eyes softening as he internalized the lesson unfolding silently before him. That the most effective influence often comes without announcement. That skill and insight can reshape the course of events with subtlety and precision, and that recognition of talent is sometimes as simple as seeing it when it has been hidden in plain sight. Maya straightened, returning to a neutral stance, her presence alone commanding attention, a living reminder that intelligence and composure could quietly redefine the energy in any room, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who witnessed it, and subtly altering the balance of authority in a space that had moments before seemed entirely dictated by hierarchy. Maya Johnson straightened a notepad on the side counter, her hands moving with precise fluidity, each motion deliberate yet understated, drawing no attention beyond what was necessary to maintain her composure and control over the environment. Jason Caldwell leaned back slightly in his chair, his eyes following her movements, a rare and genuine admiration flickering in his gaze as he observed the quiet mastery with which she managed every detail. The room hummed with a controlled energy, the soft murmurs of conversation now tinged with curiosity and respect, as if the very air recognized the subtle authority she had established. Investors shifted in their seats, the clink of crystal and the faint scratch of pens on paper punctuating the soft background as they observed the seamless resolution of a challenge that had moments earlier seemed insurmountable. Maya moved to adjust a projection slide, her fingers brushing lightly against the glass surface, aligning the charts with a precision that demanded notice without a word, the lines and numbers now forming a coherent and stable pattern across the monitors. Jason exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing as he realized the depth of understanding and foresight she brought to the room, a combination of intuition, intelligence, and calm decisiveness that transformed what could have been chaos into clarity. The lighting reflected off the polished surfaces, catching the glint in Maya's eyes and highlighting the focused determination on her face, a silent testament to the hours of observation and preparation that allowed her to intervene at precisely the right moment. Servers moved around her with renewed awareness, their steps more measured, understanding intuitively the significance of her actions and the influence she now held within the dynamics of the meeting. Jason cleared his throat, his voice steady and deliberate as he addressed a colleague across the table, acknowledging the seamless correction without diminishing the quiet power of her contribution. Maya nodded once, subtle yet commanding, her focus unwavering, aware that the room had shifted in response to her skill and that the recognition she had earned was both deserved and unspoken. The city skyline outside the floor-to-ceiling windows sparkled against the night, casting reflections on the polished wood and glass that seemed to mirror the transformation taking place within the lounge. Investors leaned in, their curiosity mingled with a newfound respect, as they noted the quiet authority and intellect Maya displayed, a reminder that influence is often exercised most effectively without display or drama. Jason watched her approach a control panel to fine-tune a minor discrepancy, noting the effortless way she managed the interface, each adjustment small yet critical, each decision executed with calm confidence. The room, once tense with uncertainty, now held a steady rhythm, a flow guided by her competence and quiet leadership, demonstrating the power of observation, precision, and insight. Every detail, from the alignment of papers to the subtle correction of the projected numbers, reinforced the realization that her presence was not just functional but transformative, elevating the entire environment through skill and intellect. Maya's eyes met Jason's briefly, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, conveying both the resolution of the immediate challenge and the respect earned through her expertise. Conversations resumed gradually, softer now, tempered with awareness of the depth of her contribution and the elegance with which she had addressed a situation that could have derailed the entire meeting. The hum of the lounge, The subtle movement of servers and the gentle shuffle of papers now formed a background soundtrack to a space that had been subtly reshaped by competence, focus, and quiet brilliance, leaving everyone present with a clear understanding of the impact one determined individual could have when preparation, intelligence, and composure converged in a single moment. Maya Johnson stepped back, slightly, letting her gaze sweep across the room, taking in the reactions that had quietly shifted in the wake of her actions. Jason Caldwell leaned forward, resting his elbows on the conference table, his expression now composed yet reflective, as if he were recalibrating not just his approach to the data, but his understanding of the people around him. Investors whispered to one another, some pointing subtly toward Maya, their voices low but filled with acknowledgement, recognizing the impact of precision and intellect delivered without spectacle. The screens displayed fully corrected analytics, the numbers perfectly balanced, but it was the intangible change in atmosphere that was most striking. The once tense room now carried a steady energy, a quiet respect that pulsed just beneath the soft lighting and the polished surfaces. Maya adjusted a few peripheral items on the table, aligning notepads, pens, and the edges of documents. Small gestures that reinforced the sense of order she had cultivated, each movement deliberate and graceful. Jason's eyes followed her, his usual sharp focus now softened with an awareness that true leadership involves more than command. It involves seeing and valuing contributions that might otherwise go unnoticed. The hum of conversation resumed, careful and measured, blending seamlessly with the soft clinking of glassware and the muted shuffle of papers, a rhythm that had shifted subtly in her presence. Maya paused near the center of the lounge, her stance calm and assured, observing the flow of interaction, noting which investors were leaning in, which staff members were adjusting their pace, all without uttering a single word. Outside, the San Francisco skyline glimmered against the night, the city indifferent to the quiet mastery unfolding within, yet perfectly framing the sense of accomplishment and control that had emerged. Jason spoke softly to a colleague, a rare smile brushing his features, words of acknowledgement that seemed to recognize not just the technical fix but the insight, composure, and intelligence that had produced it. Maya nodded once, subtle and understated, acknowledging the room without seeking attention, allowing the results of her careful observation and calculated actions to speak for themselves. The investors now seemed fully engaged, their curiosity and respect evident in small gestures, a tilt of the head, a raised eyebrow, the faint quickening of a note-taking hand, all directed toward the quiet force that had transformed the meeting. Maya's focus remained unbroken, scanning for any remaining details, adjusting a display, moving a pen slightly, ensuring that every facet of the environment reflected the order and clarity she had instilled. The room, now stable and aligned, carried a sense of quiet triumph, an invisible current flowing through the gathered professionals, the balance of authority subtly realigned in response to skill, insight, and presence. Jason took a deep breath, his posture loosening, and allowed a small, genuine nod to pass, an unspoken admission that recognition, respect, and true influence are earned not through volume or visibility, but through the steady, capable application of intelligence and care. Maya's eyes met his briefly, the silent exchange conveying understanding, assurance, and a subtle but powerful acknowledgement of shared purpose, a reminder that the most transformative actions often occur in quiet spaces, observed fully only by those who are paying attention and ready to recognize excellence. Every detail, from the reflections of the chandeliers to the alignment of documents and the hum of subtle activity, underscored the shift in the room, the change in perception, and the lasting impact of an individual whose focus, precision, and calm mastery had quietly reshaped not only the outcome of a critical meeting, but also the understanding of leadership, competence, and respect. Maya Johnson finally stepped back from the central display, her hands folding lightly in front of her as she allowed herself a brief moment to breathe, the tension of the evening giving way to a subtle sense of accomplishment. Jason Caldwell leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly, the weight of the challenge now lifted and replaced with a quiet, reflective energy, his eyes scanning the room and settling briefly on Maya with a newfound recognition of her skill and composure. The investors, now fully aware of the magnitude of what had just occurred, exchanged glances filled with admiration and incredulity, acknowledging without words that the seamless correction and the restored clarity of the data were entirely the result of her insight and precision. Maya's gaze swept the room, noting the subtle changes in posture, the slight adjustments in seating, the small nods and half-smiles of people who had just witnessed quiet excellence in action. The lounge itself seemed transformed. The polished floors, the reflective surfaces of the tables, the glimmering chandeliers, all amplified the sense of order and calm she had cultivated, a contrast to the initial chaos that had threatened to overwhelm the evening. Jason spoke, his voice measured and steady. "Your attention to detail and quick assessment saved more than just the numbers tonight," he said, a statement that carried weight beyond the immediate resolution, acknowledging the strategic thinking and composure that Maya had demonstrated. She inclined her head slightly, her expression calm and unwavering, absorbing the recognition without seeking applause or acknowledgement, knowing that the impact of her actions spoke louder than any words could. The soft lighting highlighted the determined lines of her face, the focus in her eyes, and the quiet confidence with which she moved, all reinforcing the realization that true influence often comes from preparation, insight, and measured action rather than volume or overt authority. Servers continued their work around her, moving with renewed awareness and subtle respect, aware that their colleague had just subtly but profoundly shifted the dynamics of the entire room. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights twinkled across San Francisco Bay, a reminder of the broader world beyond the immediate scene. Yet inside, the impact of competence, calm, and careful observation had reshaped perception, energy, and respect. Jason watched Maya return to a side counter, her movements precise and controlled, a demonstration of skill and composure that left no room for doubt or underestimation, and he realized that leadership is not only about making decisions under pressure, but also about recognizing talent where it emerges unexpectedly. The murmurs and quiet conversations of investors and staff were now underscored by a tone of deference and acknowledgement, a subtle chorus of recognition that brilliance does not require display, and that mastery is often most evident in moments of silent intervention. Maya adjusted a few small items, aligning documents and screens, the ease and accuracy of her movements emphasizing the depth of preparation and intellect that allowed her to act decisively when it mattered most. Jason's eyes lingered on her briefly, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, a recognition of competence, presence, and insight, understanding that the influence she exerted went far beyond the immediate resolution of the problem. The lounge, once tense with uncertainty, now held a rhythm of calm and purposeful energy, a space subtly transformed by her intelligence and composure, leaving every person present with the understanding that true impact often arises from quiet observation, precise action, and unwavering confidence. Maya stood poised, a figure of quiet mastery, her presence a reminder that skill, patience, and insight have the power to quietly command respect, shift outcomes, and reshape perceptions in ways that are as profound as they are understated, leaving a lasting impression that would resonate long after the evening had ended. Maya Johnson took a deliberate step back from the center of the lounge, letting the quiet authority she had established linger in the air, her eyes briefly meeting Jason Caldwell's with a calm intensity that conveyed both acknowledgement and unspoken understanding. Jason straightened in his chair, the lines around his eyes softening as he absorbed the subtle lesson in observation and competence that had just unfolded, realizing that control is not measured by authority alone, but by the ability to recognize and value skill wherever it manifests. The investors, now fully engaged, adjusted their focus, whispering softly to one another, their expressions shifting from surprise to admiration as they followed the precision with which Maya had handled a situation that could have unraveled the entire evening. Maya moved toward the side counter, her steps quiet and fluid, arranging documents and verifying details with methodical care, each action reinforcing the sense of order she had established without drawing attention to herself. The room, once tense and uncertain, now hummed with a calm energy, a rhythm guided by the seamless competence she had displayed, the reflections of chandeliers and polished surfaces amplifying the sense of control and clarity. Jason's voice cut through the soft murmur, measured and deliberate. "Your insight and calm execution saved the entire operation tonight," he said, his tone carrying the weight of genuine recognition and respect, acknowledging the depth of skill and presence she had demonstrated. Maya inclined her head slightly, her expression composed, conveying acknowledgement without need for validation, letting the results of her quiet intervention speak volumes. The soft ambient light highlighted her features, the focused determination in her eyes, and the precise elegance of her movements, all underscoring that true influence often resides in the mastery of action rather than in overt display. Servers moved around her with renewed attentiveness, understanding instinctively that the dynamics of the room had shifted and that her contributions had redefined the flow and focus of the meeting. Jason exhaled slowly, the tension in his posture releasing as he absorbed the realization that the most effective leadership requires not only decisiveness, but also the recognition of hidden talent and unspoken authority. Maya adjusted a pen here, a notepad there, subtle corrections that reinforced the order she had instilled, each gesture a testament to her disciplined approach and meticulous attention to detail. The investors' subtle nods, the quiet murmurs of approval, and the shift in engagement all signaled an unspoken consensus. Brilliance does not always arrive with prominence, but when it manifests, it transforms the perception and trajectory of those who witness it. Maya's gaze swept the lounge once more, noting each reaction and adjusting where necessary, a silent orchestration of focus and clarity that demonstrated how preparation, insight, and presence can quietly reshape a space and its energy. Jason's eyes lingered on her for a moment, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, conveying respect and recognition for the skill, intelligence, and composure that had guided the evening from tension to resolution. Outside, the city lights of San Francisco reflected across the glass and chrome surfaces, casting elongated shadows that seemed to mirror the subtle but profound impact of her quiet mastery, leaving a lasting impression on every individual present and redefining the understanding of competence, authority, and the unseen influence of unwavering focus and expertise. Maya Johnson finally allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible exhale, her eyes sweeping the room one last time, noting the subtle nods, the faint smiles, and the quiet acknowledgments that had shifted the energy of the entire lounge. Jason Caldwell leaned back, a hand resting lightly on the polished mahogany table, his usual sharp confidence softened by the realization of the depth of her competence and calm insight. The investors, some scribbling notes, others exchanging quiet glances, were fully aware that they had witnessed a demonstration of skill and intellect that extended far beyond the immediate resolution of the data and the charts. Maya adjusted a few items on the side counter, aligning papers and pens with meticulous care, each movement reinforcing the aura of precision and composure that had quietly transformed the space. The soft lighting reflected off the glassware and polished surfaces, illuminating her presence with a subtle radiance, casting elongated shadows that seemed to mirror the impact of her actions. Jason's eyes tracked her briefly, a subtle nod acknowledging not just the technical proficiency, but the discipline, focus, and strategic thinking that had guided the evening from potential disaster to seamless resolution. The ambient hum of conversation filled the lounge once again, layered now with a tone of respect and attention, an unspoken recognition of the influence and quiet authority Maya had established without any need for assertion or declaration. Servers moved with heightened awareness, their steps measured, understanding intuitively that her role in the evening had shifted perceptions and expectations in a way that would resonate beyond this room. Outside, the San Francisco skyline shimmered against the night sky, indifferent to the drama inside. Yet the reflection of the city lights on the polished floors and glass surfaces seemed to echo the balance of control, insight, and subtle mastery that Maya had embodied. Jason spoke softly to a colleague, words of genuine acknowledgement that underscored the significance of her intervention, highlighting the lesson that true leadership is defined not only by command, but also by the capacity to recognize and value unseen talent. Maya's focus remained steady, her movements deliberate, a careful orchestration that balanced attention to detail with overall situational awareness, ensuring that every element of the room aligned with the clarity and order she had established. The murmurs and subtle interactions of investors and staff now carried a layer of reverence and acknowledgement, a recognition of the quiet brilliance and strategic calm that had reshaped the room and the perception of those within it. Jason exhaled, allowing himself to relax fully, the lines of tension in his posture smoothing as he absorbed the subtle but powerful lesson demonstrated through her intelligence, foresight, and measured presence. Maya paused, taking in the faint smiles, the respectful glances, and the understated admiration, understanding that her quiet intervention had not only resolved the immediate issue, but had left a lasting impression on everyone present, redefining the space in which competence, composure, and insight are recognized, respected, and valued. The lounge, now calm and aligned, seemed to carry the subtle weight of her influence, a space reshaped by her skill, discipline, and unwavering focus, leaving Jason Caldwell, the investors, and every observer with a clear understanding of the impact of quiet mastery, thoughtful observation, and precise execution, and a lasting memory of the transformative power of competence exercised with poise and integrity.